The story begins with a family of an oceanographer who head out to the middle of the sea to celebrate their son's birthday. Everything seems normal at first, but the next morning they wake up to a shocking sight. The entire ocean has dried up. No one can understand what could have happened or where all the water disappeared. But very soon, they discover that the ocean water is returning all at once, as a single massive tidal surge. This wave isn't just water, it's a destructive force capable of wiping out anything in its path. And now, the question is, how will this family survive? What lies ahead for them is a terrifying journey of survival. This movie brings a completely unique concept filled with tension and thrill. And I hope you'll enjoy this explanation as much as the movie itself. The story kicks off with Tom, an oceanographer who's out in the middle of the Caribbean Sea with his family, his wife Julia, and their two kids, Ben and Casey. Tom had planned this trip not just to collect ocean samples, but also to celebrate his son Ben's birthday right there in the middle of the sea. The kids were full of excitement, looking forward to the big party that night. Ben and Casey started fishing while Julia relaxed nearby, scrolling through her phone. At the same time, Julia dove into the sea for a swim, enjoying the calm waves. But something felt different today. The waves slowly carried her far away from the boat, much farther than she realized. Meanwhile, on the boat, the navigation equipment and compasses started acting up, but Tom was too distracted, still busy helping Ben with the fishing. Julia, however, soon realized she was drifting dangerously far from the boat. She began shouting for help, panic setting in as the boat grew smaller in the distance. She feared she might drown. Luckily, her voice eventually reached Tom's ears. Without wasting a second, he jumped into action, steering the boat toward her and diving into the water to pull her back to safety. After saving her, Tom was angry and scared, upset that Julia had jumped in without telling anyone. Julia apologized, and soon the family resumed preparing for Ben's birthday celebration. That night, Ben's birthday went perfectly. He received gifts from Casey, Julia, and Tom, and he looked thrilled. Casey also took a beautiful photo of the family with her camera, which Julia loved. Later that evening, Casey received a call from her boyfriend, who warned her about a massive storm approaching the city. Chaos had already broken out in town, and people were unsure of what to do. Concerned, Casey rushed to tell Tom, worried that such a storm might affect them out at sea. Tom, trying to stay calm, told everyone not to panic. But just then, they started hearing strange sounds coming from outside the boat. When they rushed up to the deck to see what was going on, they were stunned. Dozens of buoys floating in the sea had started behaving erratically, as if something unnatural was happening under the water. Realizing this wasn't normal, Tom quickly tried to start the boat and move them away, but something was wrong with the engine. Without wasting time, Tom dove underwater to inspect the engine, and when he came back up, he was bleeding. His family pulled him up and helped him back onto the boat. Tom explained that the boat's engine had been badly damaged, likely by the buoys colliding with it. It seemed like the boat wouldn't go much farther now. Julia rushed to stitch up Tom's wound while he grew increasingly worried. They were stranded right in the middle of the Caribbean Sea, far from the shore, and now the boat had broken down. Very few boats passed through this area, which meant rescue was unlikely. After patching up his injury, Tom immediately tried to use the ship's radio to contact any nearby vessels. But unfortunately, there were no ships in the area. The radio failed to connect with anyone. On top of that, their satellite radio also stopped working, leaving them completely cut off. This left Tom feeling helpless. And then, suddenly, he looked up. Suddenly, a few comet-like objects begin falling dangerously close to their ship. Seeing this, Tom decides to use every bit of power left in the damaged engine and manages to move the boat slightly ahead. But one of those comet-like objects crashes directly near their boat, and what they see next shocks them to the core. It wasn't just a rock. It was a satellite, a real man-made satellite that had plummeted from space and crashed. This could only mean one thing. Something truly catastrophic was happening to Earth. Just then, a massive storm begins forming over the ocean. Realizing the danger, Tom and his family quickly put on life jackets and rush inside the boat to take cover. At that moment, none of them knew whether they would survive. As the storm hits, their boat is tossed around violently. They get badly injured during the chaos, but by some miracle, they all manage to survive the night. The next morning, when they step outside, they're met with a terrifying sight. The ocean has completely vanished. It's not just low tide, it's gone. But Tom soon figures out the horrifying truth. The water didn't disappear. It had shifted. All of it had moved inland, flooding the areas where humans lived. Some global or space-level catastrophe had tilted the Earth's surface, sending the entire ocean toward human-occupied regions. This meant that nearly all people living on land were likely wiped out. There would have been no way to prepare for something like this. When Casey hears this, she breaks down in tears. She deeply loved her boyfriend, and now she was convinced he was among the countless dead. The family, shocked and helpless, didn't know what to do or how to survive next. Ben then gets an idea. He fills a few gas balloons and releases them into the sky, hoping someone nearby might see them and come for help. At the same time, Tom tries using the radio again to contact anyone who might still be alive. Luckily, this time his signal connects with a man aboard a submarine. His name is NATO. NATO explains that the disappearance of the ocean was caused by a space-related event, and there's a chance that this event might reverse itself soon, meaning the ocean could come rushing back at any time. NATO had survived only because he was underwater in his submarine during the storm. He warns Tom that if they're still in the basin when the water returns, survival would be impossible. He strongly advises them to leave immediately and head for higher ground. Tom asks NATO for his location, hoping to reach his submarine and save his family. But NATO says his sub can only take 3 people. So Tom makes a heartbreaking decision. He will send his kids, Ben and Casey, with NATO and offer NATO all their food supplies in exchange. NATO, struggling with food shortages himself, agrees to the deal. Tom quickly calculates the route. It would take 2 days to reach NATO's submarine, so he plans to take the kids there first and then take Julia with him toward higher ground, which would take another 4 days. Without wasting time, the family packs their supplies and begins preparing for the journey. But just then, Tom spots a man approaching their ship slowly, walking with a dog. Tom assumes he's another survivor and, without hesitation, rushes to help him. But things take a dark turn. Instead of showing gratitude, the man suddenly attacks Tom. He thrusts a spear into him, killing him on the spot. From a distance, Julia watches it all unfold, eyes wide in shock and horror. The man wasn't a helpless survivor. He was desperate, ruthless, and only concerned about saving himself. He had come to the ship with the intention of killing the family and stealing all their supplies. Realizing the truth, Julia doesn't waste time mourning Tom. She rushes into the boat and tells Casey and Ben to hide quickly. Casey also grabs a flare gun, just in case. Meanwhile, Julia quietly grabs a knife and begins moving downstairs, trying her best not to make any noise. If the man spotted her, there would be no mercy. The stranger, now fully relaxed, began enjoying the food on the ship, completely unaware of what was about to happen. Confident that other survivors were hiding somewhere on board, he started searching every corner, determined to find and kill them all. Julian was quietly waiting for him to approach her location so she could ambush him. But when he didn't come near, she realized she had no choice but to sneak below deck, loop around the ship from the entrance, and surprise him from behind. She moves stealthily, but just as she's making her move, the man's dog spots her and starts barking furiously. Furious and desperate, Julian attacks the dog and kills it on the spot. The man, shocked and enraged at seeing his dog dead, doesn't waste time grieving. Instead, he rushes back inside the ship and begins stuffing food into his bag. But before he can finish, Julian suddenly ambushes him. The fight begins, right in the room where Casey and Ben were hiding, but the man is incredibly strong and quickly overpowers Julian. At that moment, Casey acts. She fires the flare gun at him. The flames engulf his body, and he screams in pain. But because the boat is made of wood, the fire begins spreading fast. Julian grabs Ben and Casey and rushes them out of the burning boat, taking along whatever packed food she can salvage. Outside, the kids spot Tom's lifeless body. Overwhelmed with grief, they break down in tears. Ben blames himself. He had released the balloons into the air, and he now believed it was because of that the stranger had found them, which ultimately led to Tom's death. Julian does her best to console them, but just then, she sees the same man, still alive, staggering out of the burning boat. He was badly burned, but somehow still moving, still after them. Terrified, Julian grabs Ben and Casey and begins running toward the submarine location NATO had shared. Exhausted and under constant threat, the 3 of them press on with barely enough food and water to survive. Later, after climbing to higher ground, Julian once again spots the same man in the distance, limping slowly but still following them. She urges the kids to keep moving as fast as they can. As they make their way through the landscape, they pass mountains of plastic and garbage once dumped into the ocean by humans, now lying exposed. The sea hadn't consumed them, just moved them elsewhere. Suddenly, Ben becomes severely dehydrated. Without hesitation, Julian gives him the last of her water. They'd been through so much already, the pain, the loss, and it begins to break Casey down emotionally. She yells at Julian, accusing her of dragging them through all this when there's no real hope. But Julian, despite her exhaustion and pain, yells back, telling Casey they have to keep going, not just for survival, but for Tom. As the sun sets, they stumble across the wreckage of a crashed plane, probably long lost at sea, now lying bare on dry ocean floor. Julian decides it's best to rest there for the night. Inside the plane, while checking their supplies, Julian finds the photo Casey had taken during Ben's birthday, a picture of all of them together, including Tom. The photo breaks her. She remembers how she first met Tom in a hospital years ago. That memory hits hard. Talking softly about it, Julian, Ben, and Casey fall asleep together inside the crashed plane. But in the middle of the night, Casey wakes up. She steps outside to check their surroundings and is suddenly attacked by the same man who killed her father. He had followed them all this way to kill them and steal their food. Before he can harm her, Julian leaps out from behind and stabs him repeatedly, killing him once and for all. It turns out Julian had predicted he would follow them. She had purposely let someone go outside, waiting for the right moment to finish him off. She and Casey return to the wreckage and go back to sleep. The next morning, they awaken and step outside, only to discover that the man's body is gone. They realize something terrifying. The ocean may be dry, but strange sea creatures that can survive on land still roam the area. One of them may have taken his body. Still, they ignore the thought and push forward. Later, Ben gets extremely thirsty again. He finds a small puddle of ocean water and begins drinking it. Julian yells, pulling him away. The water is toxic now. It could make him sick or worse. As the evening comes, they gather plastic and debris to build a makeshift shelter to sleep in. But late in the night, Julian is woken up by strange sounds. She steps outside, and what she sees nearly paralyzes her with fear. Thousands of massive crabs, unlike anything she's ever seen, are crawling toward them. Panicked, she grabs Ben and Casey and starts running at full speed. As they run, she spots a massive cargo ship stuck nearby, half buried in sand. Around it are shipping containers and, most importantly, people. A group of survivors had taken shelter near the containers, using supplies to stay alive. But as soon as those survivors see Julian and her kids running toward them, with giant, monstrous crabs chasing close behind. As the monstrous crabs chased them, the people near the cargo containers quickly scrambled inside to hide. Julian, Casey, and Ben rushed to them, begging them to open the container doors, but no one was willing to help. Out of fear, they left the family outside to fend for themselves. With no other option, Julian and her kids climbed on top of the container to escape the crabs. But while climbing, one of the giant crabs bit Julian on the leg. She endured the pain, and the three of them somehow made it to the top, safe for now. Meanwhile, a horrifying scene unfolded below. One of the containers had a small opening, and the crabs entered through it, massacring everyone inside. From above, Julian and her kids could hear the screams. But after a while, the cries stopped. Everyone down there was dead. The crabs had feasted. The next morning, Julian woke up to find the area eerily quiet. The crabs were gone, but Casey and Ben were nowhere to be seen. Panicking, she called out for them, only to find that they were nearby, collecting supplies and weapons from the open container to prepare for the journey ahead. Inside the same container, Julian found a working radio near one of the dead bodies. She quickly used it to contact NATO again and explained everything about the crab attack and their current location. NATO revealed that his submarine had also been attacked by the same creatures, but he also shared something even more alarming. The massive ocean wave that was supposed to hit in 1 week was now arriving in just a few hours. Julian and her kids had to reach the submarine immediately, or it would be too late. But they had a problem. They didn't know which direction to go. To help, NATO fired a flare into the sky, allowing Ben to spot the location and realize they were already heading in the right direction. Relieved, the family continued their journey with renewed hope. Soon, they spotted a yellow submarine in the distance. NATO's submarine. Julian was overjoyed, but their path was blocked by a mountain-like structure. And just as they neared it, rocks started tumbling down in a sudden landslide. Julian was separated from the kids, and more terrifyingly, the landslide unearthed even more deadly crabs. As the creatures began moving toward her, Julian took out her gun and started shooting them one by one. She screamed to Casey and Ben to keep going and not look back. They had to survive. At first, the kids refused to leave her, but deep down they knew there was nothing they could do to save their mother. So Casey grabbed Ben's hand and made a run for it toward the submarine. They eventually reached the sub, but NATO was gravely injured from a previous crab attack. Knowing he wouldn't survive, he chose to sacrifice himself so that Julian, Casey, and Ben could live. When Casey learned what NATO had done, she ran back to find Julian, who was still fighting for her life. Reaching the mountain-like terrain, Casey helped her mom climb up. Against all odds, Julian managed to grab her daughter's hand and make it to the top. The two reunited and rushed back to the submarine. Just as they got inside, the giant wave hit. The sea returned to its original state, violently pulling the submarine into its tides. Inside, Julian began remembering every moment of their journey, the struggles, the sacrifices, and Tom. Overwhelmed, she lost consciousness. When she finally woke up, everything was still. The ocean had calmed, and the submarine had drifted near the shoreline of a destroyed city. Julian, Casey, and Ben stepped outside. The entire city was gone, reduced to ruins. It was then they realized a painful truth. They might be the last survivors, not just of the city, but possibly the entire world. And with that, the movie comes to an end. If you enjoyed this explanation, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell icon to stay updated. I'll be back soon with more thrilling movie recaps just like this. Until then, take care. And here's a question for you. If you had one chance to save your loved ones in a world-ending disaster, would you choose survival or sacrifice?